Okay. Well, maybe I'm assuming too much about people's feelings about Avengers. How do we feel about Avengers?
Bad.
Okay.
Bad
I think Avengers definitely makes this list.
The Avengers thing is really just they took a thing that could have been a completely enjoyable adventure, action adventure, fucking, maybe single player, maybe not, but not a live service game, and then bolted so much live service onto it, and not particularly exciting live service to it, that it really fucked up a lot of the interest in that game, and also anyone's willingness to keep playing it past the campaign.
It's a good campaign. I think that's the part that actually makes this distressing is that you see hints of like, oh, this is like actually like a pretty decent story, and as far as the gameplay goes in that campaign, like it has its moments where you're like, I did a cool thing over here, but also it has a lot of moments where it launched in a real state, and then a lot of the stuff around the multiplayer, which they kind of want you to beat the campaign and then get into the multiplayer after that, and you get in there and you're like, oh, so let me get this straight. You have generated a bunch of very, very generic missions that you designed to be repeatable, and this is what you're expecting people to keep going with and like keep getting your gear score up, and you want to have like character specific battle passes and like all that stuff layered on top of it. I think. And I know, obviously, game development doesn't necessarily, it's not a one-to-one thing, but I feel like, gosh, if this team, it's like the Tomb Raider, it was like the studio that brought you Tomb Raider. Like, great story-driven
single-player adventures.
Yeah, if you really doubled down on, let's make a really good story-driven Avengers game that is at most like hey, you can play co-op through this thing if you want, and not have to turn it into some big microtransaction machine.
Yeah. On that front, can I take a second here? I have a Polygon article open called Marvel's Avengers Guide, Currency and Upgrade Materials. And this first sentence here. Marvel's Avengers has 11 different currencies on the gear screen. Each has its own purpose, and you'll need all of them to level up and include your gear score. Credits, units, fragments, upgrade modules, nanite, nanotubes, catalysts, plasma, polychlorons, uru, and DNA keys. 11 currencies!
It's a lot of currencies.
I'm going to say 10 more than you need.
Let's say like 9 more. Every game needs
I think the ceiling is
Come
2.
on, it's the 90.
I will accept 2. That is the max.
I feel
one
like
you pay money for and one you earn in the game, and that's it.
I feel like a strong case is emerging for this to be on the list. When you talk about the single player and the story being really good and then being completely undercut by a shitty live service model that nobody wanted or asked for and that they couldn't implement properly, like when you think about the studios involved and the work they have done on other games in the past that people love, and the fact that they spent their time on this instead of more of that, like I feel like there are a lot of angles here where like it's not a terrible game. It's more like, for how much people love the Avengers and how much there were good parts of this game, and then how much they sabotaged it.
Yeah, because it's not within. Again, we're not talking about the worst game. I think that's the tragedy of Marvel's Avengers is that there's a chunk of it that's pretty good.
Right. And it super didn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
I like the core combat in that game. I don't know.
I think one of the distressing moments for me is building up my own Avenger and getting like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to get a new ribcage for the Hulk, I guess. And then, when I hit up the homies and I was like, hey, yo, y'all want to play Avengers? Who do you guys main as? Oh, we all mained as the Hulk? Well, yeah, let's just hop into a mission. Let's get 4 Hulks going on San Francisco. And you can't do that. You can't do that. I understand canon-wise why you can't just have 4 Hulks, but if these multiplayer missions are just like rehashes of parts of the main campaign, why won't you just let me have multiples of a hero? Especially
they'll let you have 4 Hulks, or 4 of anybody, or 100 of anybody was Marvel heroes. Now that's a goddamn video game.
I was just gonna say you could write that in. It's don't worry, you can get there to a point where there's a reason for having 4 Hulks. There are multiple dimensions. There are parallel universes. There are lots of things.
Exactly. That's already a Marvel thing.
If your goal is to make a live service character-driven Avengers game, like at some point you have to sit there and go like, well, we have to have 4 Hulks. Yeah, that's something they should have tackled in a different way. You're right.
I mean, I will say that the Hulk, one of the Hulk's armor slots being ribcage is actually a point in this game's favor. They've leaned more to that nonsense.
Except it doesn't actually change your Hulk. You don't get to see your rib cage in action.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like all the gear that you're getting, you don't actually see it. You just see this is where it would be. And they're also still charging for like cosmetics. So you could have your cool Hulk from like the 1960s run where the Hulk was a little gray, but if your homie is very, very adamant that he plays as Hulk today, you can't show that off.
Yeah,
that's distressing.
All right,
it's hard for me to get past Avengers from a like. They took a game and then looked at trends and said, well, these games seem to make a lot of money when we do this, and this. And then you end up with that. Then you end up with that free-to-play level of currencies and upgrades and all this other stuff in a game that they also charge $60.
Was charged for. Yeah, but whatever.
I think that's
I paid $60 for
that makes it
a solid campaign and
yeah, like a distressing and not a worst is that there are parts of Avengers that you look at and go, this is actually pretty okay, and then they undercut all that. But
I get that.
Yeah, I could.
We'll see where the support is.
If anyone else feels strongly about Avengers, then I'd like to hear from them.
I definitely think it belongs. I think it's the epitome of. When I look at, like, this isn't worst trend, but it is, like, I am distressed by this game because, like, fuck, man, they could have done something, even if this game was, like, just a single-player game, it could have been just, like, something forgettable, but instead it's this just, like, it is the one, it feels like all the business decisions around this game was made by AI. Like, it feels like no human was out there saying we need 11 currencies or, whatever, upgrade material, whatever you want to call them. Like, it's just like, it's like, it feels like the single most, like, you can point to it and be like, and this was the end of live service games. I don't think live service games are going to end, but I could see, like, a future where, like, people look at Avengers, they look at how Square Enix lost a bunch of money in their fiscal year solely because of Avengers, and be like, and that's the moment everyone in the business side of games industry realized we can't just do whatever the fuck we want when it comes with live service, and we need to actually start making things that make sense.
You have to support for Avengers.
I feel like the sheer hubris of Avengers is what pushes it over the top.
All right.
They thought they could get away with that with even this property.
Well, to that point with the property, the thing that, having not played Avengers, as a fan of Avengers, the movies and everything, like, to me, the thing that academically about Avengers makes me think on this list is like, boy, that's a lot of people that it's one of the biggest franchises in the world, right? The heat on Avengers is huge. A lot of people are going to buy that, and then they're going to look at this stuff and be like, this is what what are my kids doing with this? Like, what the money that's getting dumped into this? Why are games so confusing? And like, for us, we can look at it and be like, no, this is just a poor implementation of a live service game. But there's I don't know how big Phantasy Star Online is in the States, but like the people that are going to come to Avengers and have that experience, I mean, they might have a great single player experience. I've actually heard like some of it's not so bad, but the currency stuff and the online stuff, that's a bummer for an industry wide thing to bring a lot of people who would come in through the Avengers. It's also interesting to me because traditionally we'd look at a licensed game and be like, yeah, of course it was a kind of a whiff, right? But then you have like Spider-Man and Batman, and you know they're chasing that stuff, being like, yeah, we're going to get ours. And then to have them kind of probably pay a lot of money for a license.
And again, it's not just a licensed game. It's a licensed game from Crystal Dynamics, which is a very highly respected developer.
But I wonder on their books, this probably did them okay. I would assume having Marvel's Avengers on there.
They purportedly lost a lot of money on it.
Oh, really?
They let go a lot of employees too.
That's a bummer.
It's always a little hard to parse that stuff because I think Brad, you'd said it at some point last week.
Yes, Square does
loves to pin their book.
They love to blame
any financial shortfall on Western studios.
Oh, they did the same thing with. They did the same thing.
At the same time,
Dynamics actually with the Rise of the Tomb Raider, or was it the first? I think it was the first Tomb Raider.
I think it was the first one.
It was between 1 and 2. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, they're like, well, it sold a few million, but whatever. We don't need to get into it.
Sure. That's a bummer. Again, not having played it, I wish. Marvel's Avengers for me is the one I wish were a better game, because I would like to play the good Avengers game. Fantasy Star Online is something I just never got into.
I have this feeling that like the Avengers fans expect something good, whereas the PSO2 audience is kind of a long-suffering group of people already, and they kind of know what they're doing.
Long-suffering because they didn't get anything good for so long.
Right.